Here we go again. Who is they? We are constantly bombarded in this culture with terms like scientific evidence and top doctors agree and scholars testify and other such appeals to some unknown authority. From toothpaste to literary analysis to archaeology to batteries and psycho-pharmacology, aka anti-depressants, and so on, we are asked to put down our simple minds in exchange for what the experts believe. The question is, who are these experts? A quick analysis of the professional and academic landscape will reveal that there are two types of people: those who believe in God and the much larger field of those who don't. Those who believe in God readily accept the existence of the immaterial world, for example. Things like love, hope, beauty, and evil. These things are immaterial. You cannot weigh love. You cannot hold beauty in your hand. You can, of course, hold a flower in your hand, but the material aspect is the flower, not the beauty. The beauty part is a metaphysical concept that you've thrust onto the flower. These attributes are transcendent. Love is love here, and love is love 1 billion miles away at the farthest star, and love 100 years ago is still love today. These attributes cannot exist in a reductionist material world where only nature can exist. And when I say nature, I mean that which can be measured. See, a reductionist, a materialist, a Darwinian evolutionist must insist that everything can be broken down to the cell or to the molecule. Everything can be weighed. But as we've mentioned before, you cannot weigh the metaphysical. You cannot weigh beauty, evil. You cannot look at goodness or justice under a microscope. Therefore, those who believe in God have access to a world that those who don't believe in God don't have access to. The kicker is, those who don't believe in God would be scarce to admit that they don't believe in love, hope, beauty, and evil, and therefore find themselves in a very precarious situation. They must either confess and admit to their inconsistent worldview or try to explain away the immaterial as material. In this way, atheists and secular humanists live as if they do believe in God, but profess with their mouth that they don't. This is exactly what the Bible tells us that we can expect. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Romans 1:18. What the Apostle Paul is writing about here, and in further subsequent verses, is that God's existence is plainly seen in the design of nature and in the existence of the immaterial realm. Things like justice and love. However, those who hate God suppress this truth in order to accomplish their own goals. In most cases, it's things like secularism and humanism. You know, the things that Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot were all about. Take the raving genius Richard Dawkins. In one breath, Richard Dawkins will say, "It is absolutely safe to say that if you meet someone who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, insane, or just plain wicked, although I'd rather not consider that." New York Times, 1989. But in the next breath, he'll say something like this: "In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt. Other people are going to get lucky. And you won't find any rhyme or reason behind any of it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we would expect to find if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but blind indifference." The Blind Watchmaker, page 133. Here we have an example where the leader of the Western secular humanistic movement declaring with one voice that some people are evil or wicked, as he says, and in the next breath, he says that there is no such thing as evil. These are direct and total contradictions to each other, and since contradictions cannot exist in nature, he is either wrong, blind, ignorant, or all of the above. Furthermore, Dawkins is very dedicated to an agenda. He lives his life supporting causes he finds to be good and decrying causes he finds to be bad. Why would one do this if one truly believes that good and bad do not exist? Here's the point. Secular thinkers must find a natural or material cause behind the ailments of the world. They must find a gene for evil or a virus for justice. Often, these things are explained away by some magical process that no one has ever seen, a process called Darwinian evolution. This is where things just happen because the alternative, that there is an intelligent creator, is too much to bear. Let's take a look at another humanist, Richard C. Lewontin, who wrote in a review of Carl Sagan's book, "We take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, and in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just-so stories. Because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism. We cannot let a divine foot in the door." Now, I don't know if that's really how he sounds, but it seemed appropriate at the time. See, and Richard Dawkins agrees with what Richard C. Lewontin says. In a letter written to design theorist Philip Johnson, Dawkins wrote, "All philosophical commitment to naturalism and reductionism is true." What? I mean, it's getting ridiculous. Here we see that top scientists and humanists agree. They have decided on the answer before they've even researched the question. And therefore, when they begin to research whatever pursuit they may fancy, they will always be closed off to the transcendent and immaterial world while living in it at the same time. Lewontin goes on to say that he takes the side of naturalism in spite of its failures. Here we see that an atheist is committed to failure rather than simply consider the creator. If a Christian were to make this same argument, he would be chastised and hung by his toenails.
These are our scientists. Not all, but some, and certainly a vocal bunch. They view the world through a lens that eliminates a large portion of reality, and they prescribe us pills, vaccines, they educate our kids, and they run our school systems. This is why we must look at the facts and figures skeptically. We must remember that psychiatry, as an example, are fields that are largely atheistic and not based on scientific evidence. It is mostly hypothesis and theory. The men who have paved the way in these fields, Freud, Vygotsky, Gardner, Erickson, Dewey, every last one of them, they're all atheists. They do not believe in a soul, and therefore they reduce the problems and ills of man to their limited worldview. If a problem must be material, so too the solution must be. While these men are now and have been in the past willing to addict patients to drugs and alcohol, Freud single-handedly can be blamed for the modern cocaine epidemic. Look it up. This trend continues today as people we know across the country are becoming addicted to psychotropic drugs that aren't curing anything. We must be more diligent in our approach to culture. We must ask who these doctors are who all agree on something. We must ask, why do doctors all agree? Should they not disagree at some point? We must remember that the ungodly will walk in contradiction and ungodliness in order to pursue an agenda of ungodliness. They will try to eliminate sin with words like biological and chemical imbalance. After all, if you're born that way, you can't really be responsible for your own actions, can you? You don't need Jesus, you just need a pill. Trust us, we're the doctors. Remember, Christian, it was only a few hundred years ago that everyone bought the line sold to them because top scientists agree. The sun revolves around the earth. This is Owen Hemsath, The Apologetic. To hear more from Owen Hemsath, please find me on Facebook, YouTube, or WordPress. Just search for Owen Hemsath or The Apologetic.